Hey everyone, welcome to my chilling journey through the night. Before we begin, I want to announce something exciting. I've set up a Buy Me a Coffee page where you can support me. You can donate $2 for a cup of coffee, and every contribution helps me improve the channel, create more high quality content, and bring you even better stories. Supporters will get a shout out with their name featured in my outros. Thank you. You can visit buymeacoffee.com/cryptictales or find the link in the video description to show your support. Special thanks to Darek, Dr Torment, INS, Nightmare Ronin for joining me. Please make sure to go show them some love because I am so honored to have them voice these sleeping stories for you guys. If you enjoyed these new types of videos, leave a comment and let me know. Now, as we wind down, imagine the lights dimming, and good night everyone. I was 13 years old at the time, now 22, and on vacation with my parents in Turkey. We were in an all-inclusive hotel and enjoying the holiday. The hotel was full of tourists from different countries. There was this one guy, around 20, who was staring at me for some reason. I felt uncomfortable and asked him how he was doing. Wrong choice. The next few days, everywhere where I was, he also suddenly appeared. Not flirting, just lurking for hours and watching me. He had a really strange vibe around him, and I felt I shouldn't be alone with him. Now, I was still young, so my parents didn't want to leave me alone in a foreign country, so he could not bother me. But one night, there was entertainment in the hotel, which became boring to me after some time. I told my parents I wanted to go to my own hotel room, and I would see them in the morning. I left and walked to the elevator, but I didn't know was the guy who was watching me also saw me leaving and he had followed me. When I saw him also coming in, I was in great fear. He looked at me silently with a sinister smile. This is it, I thought. Rape, assault, or maybe even worse. And just before the doors of the elevator were closing, someone stuck his boot in between to prevent the doors from closing. I'm not kidding. All I could see was a boot. The doors opened and it was my dad. He saw that the creepy guy was leaving at the exact same time I had left, and he didn't trust it. He looked the guy straight in the eye and said hello. My dad took me to my hotel room. To this day, I'm so glad for the rescue because I don't know what would have happened if he didn't.
This past Monday, my co-workers and I returned to our hotel room from a day of work out in the field. Rebecca and I walked to our rooms, and as we stood outside of our rooms, I opened mine and I saw someone in the bathroom. I said, "Hello?" Nobody answered. My first instinct was that it was the cleaning lady in there for some reason, and then I saw my bag with my clothes in her hands. I said to my coworker, "There's a woman in my room." Then I asked the woman, "What are you doing with my stuff?" It gets a little fuzzy here, because I can't remember everything I said and what she said, but she kept mumbling about how her key still worked, and that's how she got in. I was in shock, and she was obviously very flustered, having been caught mid-robbery. She dropped my bags and fumbled around with her purse and a white plastic bag. By this time, my coworker was behind me, watching all the insanity unfold. This woman was scrambling and walking towards the door, and I said, "What's in the bag?" thinking it's probably my stuff. And so she said, No, it's just my things, I'll show you." And so she did. I looked, and I didn't see anything of mine, and so since I'm obviously in shock at this time, I let her leave. I went into my room, and it's been ransacked. I did a quick look around to see if anything had been taken. All of my electronics were still there. Then I went into the bathroom, and I saw my underwear, my bikini, and my clothes shoved into my own bags randomly. Even my passport was shoved in there. Then I looked on the counter, and I saw that she got into my medication. I'm not sure what was going through my head at the moment, other than I wanted it back, so I ran out of the door to find her. I ran to the laundry room downstairs and out to the sides of the hotel, and I didn't see her. I realized I was never going to find her, so my coworker and I went down to the lobby to tell them what happened, and then we called the police. We went back up to my room to wait, and I noticed that there's a metal bat on my bed. A little larger than one of those novelty wooden bats you can get at a baseball game, but there's also a flashlight on the end. She must have left it behind in a hurry. She also left behind a necklace that must have fallen out of her bag when she was scrambling with mine. I was mostly freaking out at this point because I thought that she'd gotten away with my medication that I need. The police got there and took our statements and looked around the room as well. One thing that I noticed was that there were bits of drywall in the sink, and I pointed that out to the cops. But none of us really knew where it came from. We started looking at the door and the windows to see if she pried her way in somehow, but there was nothing. So we kind of just went with the idea that she had a spare key or something, even though the hotel front desk was adamant that there's no way that could be. The officer that came brought 2 more officers as backup because they thought the woman might still be in the vicinity. But after our statements were taken, there was nothing else they could really do, so they left. I sat down to finally make some calls to tell people, and as I'm on the phone, I'm thinking about the drywall in the sink, and it still didn't make sense to me. So, I'm on the phone, and looking at the drywall, and the mirror on the wall right above it. And then it hit me. I got my coworker and asked her to help me pull at this mirror on the wall, and we took the mirror down, and there's a hole there, just big enough for a desperate junkie to squeeze through. I asked Brian and Rebecca if I should call the cops again to let them know that I found this, and my boss said there's still 2 cop cars in the parking lot. So I went down to tell them, and the female cop kinda rolled her eyes, but the young guy said, "I'll come check it out." They both came back up, looked in the hole, and found a pillow, blankets, cigarettes, clothes, toothbrushes. This woman had been living in the wall behind my mirror for God knows how long. She had access to me and my room at all times. I know it might be hard to picture. There was a crawl space about 2 feet wide in between 2 rows of rooms. One of the officers called the original officer to come back and take pictures of this. She explained to him what's going on, and all I hear over the radio is, "No fucking way!" He comes back, takes pictures, and is just as mind-blown as the rest of us. Obviously, we packed up and left immediately. What's even crazier is, she has probably been there a long time. The last time we stayed at this hotel, I would randomly smell cigarette smoke, and I assumed someone was smoking in the bathroom and it was traveling through the vents. But nope, a junkie was smoking just on the other side of my mirror. She had access to other rooms too. The holes in the walls were from a renovation, and the hotel hadn't properly patched and just covered it up with mirrors. She could have been hanging out in people's rooms when they were gone. Anyway, this was insane, and I'm taking a little time off.
We were being watched by someone. This story happened to me and a friend of mine 2 months ago. It's pretty short. A bit of context first. Me and my friend often like to smoke one in the middle of the night in his village, and usually it's pretty chill. But this time, I thought we could walk to our local football field, which is in the middle of the woods. As we began walking towards the forest, we had already heard something whisper behind us, and in general, we felt like we were being followed and watched. But we thought nothing of it. As we set foot in the football field area, we sat on a bench around 150 meters away from the field. In front of us were a lot of bushes and small trees. I already felt a bit uneasy because there were no lights. It was almost pitch black. But my friend said he had been here already, and it's safe, and no one lives around here, so we got back to talking and smoking. After around 10 minutes, we heard something like a silent screech. Keep in mind, this was only 10 minutes after we had arrived. We just looked at each other and were completely silent. A few seconds passed. There was another screech, this time way closer and way louder. And the motion sensor that we had set 10 meters away went on. I was already standing, ready to leave or run away from whatever this was. But my stupid friend, like he always does, called out something like, "Fuck off." Right after he did that, we had more screeching and movement behind the bushes, and we were both frozen in fear. As I stood there, the motion detector was giving off a small amount of light, which allowed me to see a little bit of what was going on. And there I saw 2 legs behind the bushes. Grey, dirty jeans and black boots. On the side of the leg was, I don't know how to describe it. It was something like a long knife. As soon as I saw it, I grabbed my friend and began sprinting back to the village. On the next day, we walked back to check out if we had just confused something with a tree or something, but as we pulled up there were 2 police cars standing there that said we need to turn around. We didn't ask anything. We just turned and drove off. To this day, we don't know who he was or what he had planned for us.
Always change your locks when you buy a new house. Alright, so check this out. This happened in 2013 when I was 17. My family was looking at this house and the owner showed up and talked with my parents. He seemed like a nice older man, built the house himself. It was a pretty nice 2-story house overlooking a river. Anyway, I was standing back watching everyone talk, and as the owner is talking and laughing, there's a break in the conversation where he turns away from my parents and his expression completely and instantly changes from happy to the most sinister and hateful scowl I've ever seen. I don't think he noticed me watching. I probably appeared to be on my phone as my head was down. As soon as he turned back, he instantly went back to smiling. It was so creepy, and honestly, it made me feel sick. I told my mom, who said that it was weird, but maybe he's just an awkward guy. So, we got the house. We moved in, and the next weekend, my family is going to church, but I don't feel like going. So, they all leave me at home. It's Sunday morning, at about 11 a.m., when I hear a really loud banging outside. It's rhythmic, and coming from the side of the house. I was on the other side of the house, on the second floor, and honestly, my dumbass thought maybe it was the wind. I mean, it was storming that day, and I didn't think too much of it. It stopped after about 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, I hear walking around downstairs. Chairs moving, kitchen cabinets opening, and the fridge opening. I immediately and quietly lock my door, grab my baseball bat, and I call 911. While I tell them my address, I text my mom and I tell her that someone is in the house and that I've called 911. At that point, the 911 operator said that someone was about 10 minutes out. I tell her shh because I heard footsteps walking towards the stairs. Basically, the house is so thin I could track where he was anywhere. At this time, my mom responded that she's on her way, and she's 30 minutes away. So here is a 17-year-old, 5'2", 100-pound girl hunkered down in her room, full well knowing that if he came in, he'd overpower me and take the bat. I was fucking terrified. I heard him walk down the hallway towards my door. I saw the handle turn and stop, but it was locked. And I heard him just stand there. He didn't move, but I could hear his breathing. It felt like forever, but I really think it was about 10 seconds. I heard him turn and go back down. I heard the back door open and then close. And about 3 minutes later, the police pulled up. The 911 operator asked me if I could let them in or if they needed to force it. I knew he had left by then, so I let them in. No one was there. There was no sign of forced entry or nothing. When my mom got there, she looked at my stepdad and asked if we had changed the locks, but he hadn't. I think the creepiest part, and what really validated my story, was that my mom had just vacuumed the hallway, and there were shoe prints that were larger than anyone in our house. And the police hadn't been up there. And those footprints in the carpet stopped just outside my room. He died about a year after that incident. Please, don't forget to change your locks.
This happened a little bit ago, about a month, and it was a bizarre experience to say the least. I'm 15, and I was playing some video games before passing out. It was about, say, 11 p.m. when I hear the doorbell ring. Out of instinct, I began walking downstairs. But about halfway there, rationality came to mind. Who the fuck rings a doorbell at 11 p.m.? I silently strode back upstairs and stood in the hall, kind of expecting something bad to happen. An exact minute later, it rings twice. My parents began to leave their room and gave me a quizzical look. And all I had to respond was a shrug. Then he started banging on the door. My mother jumps at the first bang, and my father's eyes widened, but more in confusion than fear. He decided to go downstairs and peep through the view hole. It was our neighbor. My dad hesitantly opened the door, and I could hear my father's voice tremble slightly. Hey, what do you need? Next thing I hear is an entire full-blown scream argument from our neighbor, claiming that this household was his, and we stole it from him. My father's uneasiness was quickly replaced with annoyance, and he simply shut the door without giving our neighbor the time of day. My dad stepped on the first step going up the stairwell when our neighbor first hit the door. I'm not talking about banging with a fist. This man was full body slamming it. My father was stunned for a second, and my neighbor charged the door again. This time we began hearing the splintering of wood. Everyone reacted at once. My father went back to brace the door with his body. My mother went to go get the other two kids, and I went for 911. The body slamming ensued for another 5 minutes, and while I was on the phone with 911, it stopped. I thought it was over, and I was relieved. But I still stuck on the phone. I go to peep out the front window of my house, and boy, was it only getting started. Our neighbor took his Jeep Wrangler and simply directed it straight to our house. We had zero clue what he was doing until he hit the gas and we heard the squealing of tires. Then he immediately hit the brakes. He was trying to scare us out of the house. I was still on the phone with 911, and I stepped away from the window to comfort my siblings, cracking jokes and such. Eventually, the police arrived and arrested him.
I was followed at night. When I was 18, I got sent to live with my dad in South Africa. Normal teenage boy angst. I'm as British as beans on toast, so this was a very new experience. My dad lived near the airport in Joburg, and he was often away for work. So, I basically lived alone for long stretches. The shortest was a month. The longest was 3 months. I essentially did my own shopping and what one would consider mild cooking. I couldn't drive yet, so I walked everywhere. And my dad didn't give me many rules. Just one, really. Don't go out alone at night. He didn't mean our yard, because we lived in a gated community, and there was always a security guard at the front. He meant out. The neighborhood was different after dark. The nights were unsafe. Robbers, he said. I heard him, but I didn't take it seriously. It used to get really dark by 6 p.m. It was darker than any night I'd ever encountered in London. Without the street lamps, it would have been pure black. One evening, around 7 p.m., I decided I wanted crisps, potato chips for my esteemed American friends. I was home alone and had been for 2 weeks. I was so bored. So I broke the only rule I had. Even the security guard tried to stop me when I told him I was going out. He told me he'd buy them for me after a shift in an hour, but I was nearly 19, 6 foot tall, built like a rake on shoulders, no fighting experience at all, but full of bravado. I wasn't scared. The road from my dad's house was brightly lit. The store was about a mile away, but there was an avenue you had to walk through that had loads of trees and no lightning. Pitch black. There was a cold wind blowing. The sounds of insects and birds felt magnified. And that's when I heard the footstep. I looked back and around, but I couldn't see anyone. So I kept walking, telling myself I was imagining things. I walked a bit more, then I heard them again. Footsteps, but again I couldn't see anyone. There was the road where I was, and then a path on the side lined with trees. I was in the middle of the road because I convinced myself it was safer, and I realized the person wasn't on the road, they were on the path. I kept walking, faster this time, singing loudly. I was convinced I was imagining it, but the footsteps continued. I was feeling more and more frightened. So to assure myself I was just imagining it, I stopped and turned on the torch on my phone, then pointed at the path. Peeking from behind a tree, there was a man. He was maybe around 30, and he was watching me. I swear he had something in his hand. I'm not sure if he did, but in my mind, I saw what looked like a knife. I turned around and just ran back home. I didn't bother listening for anything. I just ran back as fast as I could. I couldn't breathe, and my chest was on fire. The security guard heard me and had the gate opened even before I arrived. He looked at me with a knowing as I panted, trying to catch my breath. He never asked me about it, but I know he knew what had happened. I never saw the man again, and I don't know what would have happened. I also didn't tell my dad, or anyone for that matter. The security guard got me the crisps, if you're wondering. And for the rest of the year, I stayed there. I never went walking alone at night again.
Back in about 2000 or 2001, I was driving by myself from visiting my mom in Colorado back to Arizona. I was in a station wagon and had a desk my mom had given me that was my grandfather's. I've always been scared driving at night, that there's someone in my back seat that is going to get me. This might be because I've watched too many scary movies or my mom's paranoia rubbed off on me. I was in the army and drove back and forth a lot to visit her. She would get mad at me for sleeping at rest stops or gas stations. and tell me that someone was going to kidnap me and kill me. But I just didn't want to be bothered with the hassle and expense of a motel most of the time. I digress, so I'm driving an empty stretch of highway late at night, with no other cars around. This red truck comes up behind me, flashing his lights and honking his horn at me. I was thinking to myself that there was something wrong with my car, or maybe there was something wrong with the desk in the hatchback. Because why else would he be so insistent on pulling me over? So I pull over. I was in my mid-20s and still a bit naive. And get out of my car. As I am getting out of my car, he's directly behind me and still flashing his lights and honking his horn. I got to about the middle of the car when it hit me. Why is he still honking at me when I am out of my car? That's odd. Then he gets out of his truck. That's when I knew something's just not right. I jumped back in my car and sped off. The next exit was 45 miles or so away. He followed me the entire time. I take the first exit and go to a crowded grocery store with the laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its lights flashing, and I was next to it. I figured if there was an ambulance, then eventually a police officer should come. The man stayed in his truck in the grocery store parking lot, watching me the entire time. I was terrified. I did not want to get out of my car and felt like an idiot if I would have had to tell someone what happened. I waited for about an hour and he finally left. After he left, I waited a little longer before continuing my drive back to Arizona. I was paranoid and watchful for any red trucks the entire time. Fast forward about 5 or 6 years. I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type crime show with my hubby at the time. He knew what happened as we were dating when it happened. And what story pops up? One about a man on that exact stretch of highway with a red truck that used those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them. I really am glad my gut told me something was wrong and to get back in my car and drive. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for taking the time to listen in to these Let's Not Meet stories. I want to thank Derek, Dr. Torment, INS, and Nightmare Ronin again for joining me in this episode. I have had the pleasure to work with them in the past and it was nothing but great. They are highly underrated narrators and I want you to go and support them fully. I've of course left their links in the description down below. Once again, I remind you that I have made a Buy Me a Coffee page. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/CrypticTales if you want to support me. Truly. All of your contribution will go towards making high quality content. I've said this in the intro, but just a reminder. If you guys like these types of videos, please leave a comment down below letting me know if I should make longer versions of this. And one more thing before I let you go. We are almost at 430 subscribers at the time of recording this. Thank you all so much, truly thank you so much. You guys have been nothing but great to me for all these months I've been on YouTube. And I've truly enjoyed it all. So anyway, like always, it's been Cryptic Tales. Peace out.